Hello, and welcome to Resolve, an afterplay show. This is an after show for a role-playing game that does not have an actual play, but we tell you all the details of our game so you don't have to listen to it. Hi, I'm Sammie. I'll be your host. My pronouns are she, her, and I play Assyria Molly, pronouns also she, her, the wonderful mermaid. Joining me today is my wonderful co-host, Alec.
Hi, I'm Alex. I use he, him pronouns, and I play Moogle mercenary Smog and his Marlboro companion Juice, both also use he, him pronouns.
We are joined today by Dexter.
Hello, my name is Dex Fan. I use he, him pronouns as well, and I play gender-bent furry Athena, Athenos.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Now that we're all here, Alex, why don't you tell us about the actual play?
Previously in Effete, the party enters the strange castle and meets a quadrupedal being with a humanoid, wood-like torso and a spherical, metallic head. Lone is deaf, but between sign language and a tablet, they are able to communicate. Lone claims no one else is alive in the world of ages, and they are keeping vigil against wolves at the castle. Lone's wolves seem to be some sort of ghost, although they say the wolves bear some resemblance to what others know as wolves. With Smog suggesting that the Master of the Lost may hold domain over departed souls, the party heads to the world of the Lost. In the world of the Lost, the party finds bright light, plants undergoing quick life cycles, and mannequin-like guards in front of a medieval fair. While the guards do not speak, they suggest the party must give up their hearts to enter. Assyria and Pony fashion hearts out of a tooth and hair respectively, while Smog considers giving up Charlene's pendant. Smog creates a large heart from Athenos' memory after the party reenacts a dramatic scene for him.
Alright, so now that you've heard the actual play, let's do a deep dive into the session.
Alex mentioned that it seemed shorter, like the synopsis this time, and I feel like that's because our characters had a more bonding time. We did a lot more like party banter as opposed to directly progressing the plot, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, something that's big that I maybe could have put in there, but chose not to because I don't think it resolved to more than banter, was Geyser immediately making a flame tornado.
That's true. She did do an agent of chaos.
Directly locating us because, fire is very visible in this very dark, snowy land, and then also melting into the floor.
Though thankfully we did learn that there's apparently no living beings in this world, so that should be interesting.
Yeah, let's talk about the world of ages. So we kind of talked about this a little bit last episode where we arrived in this snow wasteland with a castle in front of us. But, we got into the castle now, and it is spooky and a little dangerous.
Well, is it dangerous?
We were told to be careful.
That's fair.
Maybe there are ghosts in the castle that aren't as ravenous as the wolves that'll get us if we do something wrong.
I have so many questions. Who created the castles? What are the wolves? What's the deal with Lone? What is the purpose of this one robot friend?
Are they a robot? Because they seem to have biological elements, they have bug legs and wood on their body.
But didn't they have a metallic chrome head? And,
yes.
And they were there are no living beings on this planet or world?
I mean, yeah, it's something that I wanted to dig into but couldn't think of a good way to do it, or really a reason to do it as Smog, was why is their head metallic? Is that a helmet? Are they from somewhere else and they need to have some sort of supply of a different gas to breathe? Because they were definitely visually sensing things, and it seemed to be through their head, but we weren't getting any visual feedback of our own from the giant sphere.
Yeah, it was just you looking at a warped version of yourself, which I'm sure is symbolic of something. But yeah, he's deaf. He doesn't seem to have eyes. He has 3-fingered hands, and he has 4 bug legs that sort of go out from his torso.
Oh, were they bug legs? I thought it was furniture-esque. Oh, I was just getting Beauty and the Beast vibes. We arrived in the cold as travelers, and then went to seek shelter inside after someone made a flare tornado, and and then we're greeted by what I was thinking as mobile furniture.
Daniel drew a picture of it last night, and it's very much like stilt propped up bug legs.
Oh, okay. This leads me to more thoughts, because does it not consider itself a living creature?
I don't know. That's a good question. And also, I didn't think to sense that using a series super senses. So I don't know if this thing is biological or not.
It's also a question that Smog probably isn't too interested in asking right now because of just coming off of the conversation with Tao, like, you're not just code. I don't need to poke that hornet's nest by having a being that might possibly just kind of be a robot, but was having a more in-depth conversation with us.
Robots are people too, you know.
Depending.
Hey Google, are you a people too?
Well, people are the only species known to blush, and sometimes my lights turn red.
Wow. Wow. An interesting answer from Google.
Did Google call people a species?
All Google said were that people are known to blush, and sometimes Google's dots go red. Okay? Like, that is all.
I thought it said people are the only species known to blush. And it's like, that's an interesting formulation of that sentence.
Other species do blush, but like not in connection to embarrassment? Is that what they're trying to say?
I don't know. Google, you're weird.
True.
How does Thanos feel about Lone being antagonistic towards wolves?
Well, I did make a dark link with this friend, so I do feel like there's an antagonistic relationship there waiting to form. Thanos has probably been negged before, so this isn't new per se. They're not friends, which is very funny because Assyrian and Thanos somehow always end up on the opposite end of the friendship scale with like everyone we meet.
It's really good. It's not intentional, I promise. It's not so much that Assyria views Lone in like a friendship light. Right now they have a master link with them because they were going about the process of teaching them that sign language, which Assyria found very interesting.
Yeah, I feel like we're also continuing the vein of Smog and Assyria having similar relationships with people, but in sort of different veins, because also have a master link with Lone, but more because of learning the lore of this world and teaching them a bit of what's going on outside their own world.
I feel like this world is going to be a very different experience from our previous world, simply because it doesn't feel like there's like an outright objective that people are having a problem with that could lead us to the core. I guess in this case, the wolves might have some connection to the core of the world, but I think it's very interesting that the moment we got into this new world, we met someone, and then to find answers, we traveled to the world of the lost.
Because everything here is gone, so it has to be there.
Things that should theoretically be gone are sticking around. That makes me wonder if our jostling the world of the lost might have created this situation somehow. Like, the reason spirits aren't departing is because the master doesn't have the power they need to usher spirits over.
First of all, are we giving the master credit for being like the Grim Reaper? Because if that's the case, I have several problems. Secondly, have we confirmed that these wolves are ghosts? I know we were like contemplating that. I don't think Lone ever gave hard confirmation.
That's why in the actual plays, like, they seem to be like ghosts. They're close to ghosts because it didn't seem like Lone had another word for what these were supposed to be. So that's sort of the best lead we have so far without going into more words.
I actually think it'd be really funny if the Master was the Grim Reaper.
Why?
The Master hasn't become a sentient being until very recently. So I think it's just a very humorous concept. This being that functionally runs the universe and had no knowledge of what it was capable of suddenly gained sentience and realized things are obstructing what it's supposed to be doing, which is taking souls. I don't know.
Taking lost things. I'm very scared of helping the master. I know I've said this prior. If we get more organs, is it going to get more powerful, or is it going to go back to its non-aware state?
And here we have yet another example of Assyrian and Thanos being on opposite sides of like the liking people spectrum, because Thanos is like, wow, this guy's really cool. He's got it going on. And Assyrian's like, we can't help him. The polar opposite of the sleep beast situation.
Which makes me very happy because what is the move that you picked for a Siri?
I took the move Magical Teacher from the Mystic playbook, and it lets me take an apprentice. I chose a Siri from way back. I decided she was going to be my champion, simply because she was strong-willed, and it's good to have someone who doesn't completely agree with you all the time. It's also nice to have someone who agrees with you some of the time, but here we are. And this move gives +1 forward to us to help each other use magic, since that's something that both Athanos and Asiri do quite regularly.
I wouldn't say that Asiri doesn't agree with Athanos all the time. There have been circumstances where they're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like your decision with the Twilight Sphere, I think Asiri followed along with that. It's not like we're on completely opposing positions.
Indeed. It's just funny that we have either different ways of judging people's character or very much coming to different conclusions of people's characters.
What do we think about the castle itself? Because it seems like a lot of it is hidden under the ice. We saw a couple statues in a basin out at the front that seem to be human. What's going on there? What made it?
Yeah, I would like to investigate a little bit more into the castle when we wake up from the world of the lost. But also in my head, I'm like, what's upstairs? Asiri was like, all right, this place seems maybe dangerous. So she did a quick scout of the locale just to make sure we wouldn't fall into a pit trap or something. And Dan said that Asiri felt a very strong energy presence above us. And as we were exploring a bit more, the further up we went, the stronger it got. And it almost felt like a very strong deep sea current. So Asiri is like, nobody else can go up there. I don't think you guys can handle that sort of force. But I'm like, what if I go and handle the force?
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see maybe even what's different about the castle when we get back from this medieval Renaissance fair. They're related, right? The Master mentioned that each world of the Lost is separate from the other, and they're all tied together based on the worlds that they're attached to, if that makes sense. So it'll be very interesting to see what was lost from this world. Apparently joy. Jousting.
Honestly, having never played a Souls-like, I'm like, are you sure, Dan, that you didn't get any inspiration from one of those for this? It just seems like the dankest, nastiest guy in the saddest world, which is all of those games as far as I understand.
It would not shock me. The only one he hasn't played, I think, is Demon Souls, which is what Zach keeps referencing.
Okay.
But he is playing Dark Souls with his brother right now, and he has played other ones. So.
All right.
You're right. It is giving very much FromSoft Dark Souls 1 painting of Ariama's, where you stumble upon a painting and then you fall into it, and then it's this snow hellscape, basically, with a castle. So perhaps.
So we're somewhere between there and Super Mario 64.
Yeah, this is...
the two extremes.
This is the duality of our game.
We have a lot of historical questions to ask of Lone, and I don't know how interested they seem to be in answering those. Why are we in this apocalypse setting? Why do these ghost wolves potentially keep attacking you? Why do you have a wood stick that launches fire? The basics.
I guess a pretty basic thing we could have asked, but didn't after, why are you here? What are you doing? Is, okay, why are you defending the castle? We didn't even bother to ask that. What is important to you here?
And, this creature completely ignored us in its process to defend the castle. We walked in and it was trying to leave. It was going outside to do something to defend the castle, and we stopped it. So it did not register that we were threatening, which is a mistake with Geyser around.
Right. That's something that inclines me to think of Lone as more of a person and less of a sort of construct. They seem to have this sense that they could have, with their imagination, made us up. That's why they seem to be ignoring us, is they thought we were a figment of their imagination.
Yeah, because when you mentioned, or when Smog mentioned that we were going to go to the world of the lost, we might disappear, they were just like, that doesn't surprise me. Things disappear all the time.
True, and I think one of the earliest questions Lone asked of us was, are we real? Well, they said real, ? But presumably...
They also followed that up immediately with, do you kill?
Their priorities were clear. Are you real? And if you are real, do you kill?
Someone was like, I mean, I could. Do you have a contract for me? And Pony was being like, I haven't, but I could.
Great. Lucy's like, only to eat.
I love that Pony was just like, I haven't before, but there's a first time for everything.
That's a normal response to murder.
The magic lessons are paying off. I guess this would be a good end to explain, now that we're talking a little bit more about the finer details of communicating with Lone, why the title is in all caps. Lone would only type in all caps. So it's like, that feels significant. That feels like some sort of identity or something to me. So I'm going to keep that for the name that they gave us and include it in the title.
I enjoy how they introduced themselves as that, and they were like, I am also alone as well, the only one here. And I wonder if it spends a lot of time reflecting on that.
I'm having the stupidest realization. Lone is a wolf.
Is it?
They're a lone wolf.
Yes.
I got the lone wolves thing, but I wasn't sure if it was lone is a wolf, one of.
So are they like the energy / spirit of a wolf put into this construct now, and they are the only one left?
Yeah, it's got to be like a Blade situation.
Oh no. Not again.
Not again.
I think a plus side of Lone being the sole semi-possibly living creature in the world of pages is that it is going to give us as a party a lot more opportunity to interact with each other to kind of figure out what's going on, rather than interacting with external entities, which was very prevalent in World of Spirit.
It's such a stark contrast going from the world of spirit to the world of ages, where like, oh, we have this cute little bustling town and all these people are just doing their best, and then we're here and then there's nothing.
Because there are less small tracks that we can go down to try to hone in on this mystery, it seems important to stay together, especially because there's some ominous force waiting out there that could overwhelm us if we separate. That could all go to crap in the World of the Lost, though, because that's a fair. If you're going to a theme park with all your friends, especially if there are 7 of us, if we include Juice, are you really going to stick together the entire time?
No, and we don't really know what's inside other than it's set up like a jousting tournament. We don't know if there's other booths or, can we get a giant turkey leg? I
was just going to say, give me a turkey leg and a funnel cake.
Azuria's going to be like, what is this?
Yeah.
This thing is ill-equipped for surviving the depths.
Do you at least offer a tofurkey leg? Gosh.
Tofurkey leg? In the many Renaissance fairs I've been to, I have never once seen a tofurkey leg. Talking more about the World of the Lost that's attached to the World of Ages.
Lost Ages.
There's these weird, almost plant-like growths of light that come up. And it's very... Did Dan give a temperature? Is it warmer than...
That's not something that I grabbed in my notes, at least.
Okay.
I assumed warmth. That was just my perception of what happened, not anything that Dan said.
It's hard not to imagine something warmer than whatever polar ice cap we have built this castle into. We find the fair, and these wooden mannequin soldiers are guarding it and won't let us access it.
Yeah, I think the first thing that Tao said... I think maybe that's the first thing that anybody said when we were there, is just oh, it's so bright and there's so many people. That's so weird considering, oh.
Yeah, that was Tao. It was really good.
That was so good.
And Smog being Smog just tries to push their way past. Yeah, I belong here.
Yeah, it was also used to Renfest. It's watch out for the nerds. They're gonna just be teaming this place. Everything's going to be all out of whack and anachronistic. It doesn't matter. People are trying to buy back the past, and it's not going to work.
How many Renaissance fairs does Smog visit on a weekly basis?
On a weekly basis? He probably has had a job at one, probably had to hunt somebody down who's hiding out in a Renfest or something. I'm thinking very, because I've been listening to Adventure Zone Steeplechase, that sort of deal. We created a fantasy land out of our cyberpunk land. Does the series have a sense of different ages of her world? Now I think about it, because I was thinking Athena's probably not as much. We know that there is a more violent phase, but we don't really know much about different ages of a series world.
It's hard because she's sort of in a turning point of one. So previously, in the way back past, there's just the Abyss, Darkness, the World of Gods, whatever, and then people come after that. But the sort of era prior to her life / the very beginning of her life was one of plenty, but now it's sort of fallen into this one of starvation. So she's at that turning point whether or not her people will survive past that. And I don't really think when you're living in a crisis time that your concern is, oh, I'm living in the great turning point era for my people. It's more like, oh shit, I need to survive. So I don't think that's something she would maybe functionally categorize in the moment.
What about the bloody history with the Thanos? Now that I'm thinking about it, because we touched on that for the end of this.
Yeah, it's actually something that I kind of pseudo came up with during the session based off of something that Dan and I talked about during character creation. Part of playing a god, obviously, me, Dexter, nowhere near godlike powers. So I was like, how can I play this character in such a way that it makes sense for my brain to work? Because I obviously can't store thousands and thousands of years of knowledge. So how Dan and I kind of discussed it was that the gods store away their memories for a certain period. Maybe every 100 or 200 years, they'll pack up those centuries' memories and put them away and then start fresh with a baseline knowledge of how the world works, who they are, and current events. So not packing away everything, but just older items get shifted to the back. So I played the skit event that we did during the session very much like Athenos going into the attic of his mind and unpacking a box of old memories to find something that was relevant to removing hearts, since in their current age, they don't really do that anymore.
That definitely puts context to why Athenos was so enamored with the idea of computer storage. That must be a very interesting concept for him, and the idea of his own memory.
Technology is wild. I say as Dexter, and also as Athenos, I think he loves the whole modern concept of technology. I think it's very cool.
Athenos would totally be a body modder, just put a hard drive right in his head.
Probably.
If Athenos goes back to their home world, is that something they're going to start instilling into the people of their world?
He might push them for more growth in terms of technology, but I don't know if he'd be going for exactly the kind of technology that he's seen. He wants his own people to do their own thing. But I think he's currently experiencing advancements that are well past the abilities of his current people, and they have access to magic. So that's wild to him.
Is he taking in any of the warnings that the people of Sequence Charter seem to be giving with the governance, or that Smog has talked about with the humans of his own world?
In a sense, the governance was a extremely powerful being, whether it was he doesn't really understand what they are so much as he thinks that they're some sort of godly being. They were using their power to force people to do their bidding, to enslave them. He feels like that is very wrong, and it's something very antithetical to how the world is run in his world. It is all about freedom there, the freedom of choice, the freedom to live, the freedom to keep living even if you die. Any sort of higher power being that is restricting that freedom of people, or is unwilling to guide them, is an unhelpful presence, that kind of thing, he's very, very against, I suppose. But yes, warnings from the people, he's probably not taking them as seriously as he should, simply because he's oh, they're just mortals. They're seeing the world as it is right now, and they only see it for such a brief flicker of time that he's okay, should any sort of danger rise up, I'll probably be able to handle it.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see how the views expand and contract as we think of our different characters' mortalities and the scope of their lives. It's hard for characters like Assyria and Smog not to think about what's immediately an issue, because compared to a god, they only have so much life to live.
How long approximately is a Moogle's lifespan?
It's purposely vague in a lot of Final Fantasy stuff, so it's purposely vague for Smog. I want it to be believable that he's 27, but I also want it to be believable that he's maybe 70 for people who don't know exactly how old he is.
Because I was going to say that a series people, because they live so deep and it's so cold, they sort of metabolically move slower. So Greenland sharks, they get up to 400 years old, stuff like that. But again, they're not usually doing a lot down there either. So it's a very slower paced form of life.
Yeah, I would say that Smog might live on that order too, but that's still nothing compared to eternity.
True. It is something you have to contend with, especially now that we have Athenos, who is actually immortal. We have Tau, who is immortal so long as their data exists.
Who knows what's going on with Geyser?
Who knows what's going on with Geyser? But
Who knows?
I'm going to assume that they are immortal just because the converge happens. It's an interesting split, and Pony's just like 5 years old. They're a horse. They're only got like maybe 10 more years max. So.
Like, what is the lifespan of a talking animal in Shrek world, considering, you know, Donkey has donkey children?
I don't know if they ever discussed that, and I don't know if I want to know. That's something we should ask Lone when we get back, is how long have they been around / doing whatever they're doing?
It's probably a good question to ask. It's the world of ages, so I assume, like, it's been around for a while. But I'm having one of those stupid realizations, or a realization that I was stupid. That's the kind of realization I'm having. Kind of like how Alex was like, lone wolf! Lone is a wolf! That kind of thing. I am now remembering that during character creation, Dan and I were discussing that Thanos is also very inspired by, like, the worlds of Elden Ring and, like, Dark Souls, where, like, the ideas you, like, keep coming back and, like, blah, blah, blah. And I'm only now just seeing that connection for me in this world.
Uh-huh.
And obviously it's very dark, very cold. Assyria's got that connection as well. So I'm, like, just trying to find all the things that are, like, related to our characters that have fleshed out this particular world.
So that lends a lot more credence to my theory that, like the world of Spirit, which Dan told us after the fact, was more focused on Assyria, even though, yes, there are supposed to be different things for all of us to glom onto. I thought that just by process of elimination, what I was seeing from the other portals, the world of ages must be for Thanos. If you said in character creation that you wanted to have inspiration from those games, and the vibes we're both getting is those games, I wouldn't be surprised if this was something that's supposed to have more to catch on to for Thanos.
Yeah. When you were talking about how we have so many characters who are, like, immortal but are very killable, Thanos' power is derived from the number of people who are believing in him as a god in, like, the nearby area, in the world that we're in. Being in a world that is devoid of what this lone person would consider a living being makes it very difficult that's why Thanos didn't cast any magic in this past session, because he's worried about how much power he actually has here. He feels like a little vulnerable. So I'm really excited to see where this goes.
Yeah. And I don't want to say, like, there's not catches on this world for Smog and Juice too, because I've very purposefully held Smog back from saying something along the lines of this, like, this is an inevitable future for most worlds. He does not trust people to be good stewards of a planet. And this is like a nightmare scenario, but also feels like an inevitability for him.
Do you think he's going to start impressing those beliefs onto the party when we get back?
I don't think it'll be as blunt as some of the things that he said before, because this is something that's very core to his backstory and something that he actually feels a stake in impressing on other people. But maybe. Things could also drastically change if Smog hits playbook change while we're in the world of the Lost.
Oh, God.
I have a very big turn for Smog coming when that happens, and I am 6 experience points away from that.
Oh my god.
Dude, I think I'm at, like, level 3 or 4. Like, I think I just got my advanced move.
Oh my gosh. We'll just have to keep making Darklings feed you that XP.
If there's one person that everyone hates, that's it. I'm changing playbook. So, it could be so soon.
Do you want to talk about what you have in mind, or do you want to keep that more a surprise?
Yeah, I do want to keep that a surprise for the other players, because I think it'll have a lot of fun things we can play with. But I think I'll be fairly open about it immediately after it happens, so don't worry about me holding on to it for too long.
Because it's going to be next session, right? So...
It could be next session.
Probably.
That's ridiculous. It did, like, send Dan a couple last minute things. Nothing big about the character, just some mood stuff. So I'm ready for it to happen now.
Cool. That's exciting. I have no idea where a series is going except forward.
I feel like everybody could become a mystic.
True.
We all
Correct.
love magic so much.
This is a casting party.
We're
a party full of casters.
I know I just played a Prodigy in your game, Alex, but, like, it also does make sense now that I have a relationship with a Thanos, so that's something to consider.
That's interesting. Are you purposefully trying to steer towards or away from that direction just so that you can have a different experience as a player?
Not particularly. I'm just seeing where the tide takes me. But
Wow.
that was awful. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. I wanted Asiri to be very organic if we ever get to the point where she changes looks, because I didn't in the last game. So it's not a guarantee to happen, and I don't want to, like, plan for that eventuality. If it happens, it happens, and we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, for Smog, I think I've talked about this a little, but just to be clear, I've had a shift like this planned, and I think I've had the playbook planned for a while, but I've added on to the actual circumstances of this playbook change are going to be as we go along. So I have shifted the circumstances of it, but the actual change that's happening is pretty much the same. And there's reason for it that I'll probably talk about maybe next episode.
What about Athenos? Do you have any plots going forward for them?
It's very rare, I feel like, for a god to learn a new thing. So he's kind of relishing in the amount of knowledge that he has access to right now. Like, he spent the time off that we had in between worlds, like in the library. He's perhaps getting overly familiar with Smog's tablet. You know what I mean? So kind of like how you were saying with Asiri, the only thing that you have in mind for her is forward. Kind of similar. Perhaps there might be a turn when perhaps if he gets impatient, as gods are wont to do. We haven't really seen, like, his fickle side. Perhaps we've seen his petty side, but not really his fickle side yet. Mm-hmm. So I'd be interested in exploring that as we continue exploring worlds. And he's just like, I'm over it. Get me home. I should have the power to do this, blah, blah, blah. So we'll see. We'll see.
So, hearts, huh?
It's so gross. I didn't want to put it in the actual play, so I wanted to give you a little heads up that it's gross if we got around to it. But the guards insinuated that the party had to give their hearts to go forward by pushing out a bucket full of hearts.
They were very meaty, and the Asiri did smell them. But we did learn something from that. There doesn't seem to be that same lively fleshness inside the Ren Fair we're trying to get into. So what these hearts are is a mystery, but also definitely the Master's heart is not in that bucket, but it is around, or perhaps the Master's organ. Dan never really specified which one, but probably logical to assume it's the heart.
That does go along with echoes, souls. Those are the currencies in those games, right? So a heart would be the natural sort of in between of those two, if that seems to be where the inspiration is going.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how these two worlds connect and what we're going to find inside this Ren Fair that isn't just the joust. And also what the joust is going to be.
You think Athenos will try to joust?
I don't think that's wise. I, Dexter, don't think that's wise. Athenos probably will find it like a wonderful idea.
My initial reading of the symbolism of giving up your heart to enter and it being a very medieval world is that we are giving up any personal ambitions or feelings to fulfill roles.
Yes.
And that's why I immediately glommed onto, the thing that Smog is going to give up is this pendant from Charlene, the one person that he wanted to maybe be better for because he's very steadfast in being the best Moogle possible and making sure to defend the Espers and trying to grapple with messing with his original party of heroes and being their mid-boss for their final dungeon. Yeah, we're going to canonically call this pendant a crystal heart, and that's what Smog's going to give up to enter.
It feels very full circle, too, because this pendant is a creation of the World of the Lost, was given to you by the World of the Lost, so giving it back at this point feels very natural.
But also Smog gets to be a little flippant about it, being like, well, this isn't the real thing, so I don't care about it. Even though, like, obviously you care about it. I was talking about putting it into the gun, part of its designs. Of course he cares about it.
When Asiri was doing their deep dive into whatever this heart situation is, I used my light ability, we have to think before we act. And the one thing Dan was like, do not give your actual heart. Do not do that. So Asiri's like, yeah, we're not doing that. No, thank you. Shoves everybody off to the side and is like, hey, figure something out real quick.
Actually, we didn't get to resolve the giving of the heart to get into the fair. I wonder if just the one heart will be enough to get all 7 7 of us in.
I think there's something, we should go back and talk more about this item, but the item that we ended up making, Dan was clear to say, had the weight of 5 hearts, and I think that was a very specific number for him because we were working on 2 or 3 different things that maybe could be accepted into the bucket. So I think, yeah, weight of 5 hearts thing I think was purposeful.
Okay, got it.
Can we talk about that, though? Because that was, like, beautiful at the end, where Athenos is, like, thinking about what could possibly be an equivalent heart exchange. And, like, you come up with, like, on the spot this skit for reenacting this mythical thing that happened in your timeline. Beautiful. All of my improv happy feelings just went off. That was a ton of fun.
I feel like I had a lot of fun with that scene. It was very enjoyable.
That move, for me, is really where the idea of the Linksmith shines, because so much of it is PvP, essentially, or being a gaslighter. And this is like one thing that the Linksmith can do that's positive for other people. It's giving them something that they're missing from their memory. We should talk about exactly what that skit was, though. Like, you need to tell us the story.
Oh, absolutely. We can't do a Calvin and Hobbes noodle incident where it's never described. We were trying to get into the Renaissance Fair. We needed hearts to do it, and we needed it to not be our hearts. Was the crux of the whole thing. And we had some psycho glass from Pony, I believe. Oh, no. It was Smog's ability. Your ability, you were going to create something from my memory.
It's the move apparition from the Linksmith playbook.
There we go. That makes a lot of sense about why you were talking about the Linksmith just now. I thought you were like dropping hints that was going to be your next class. Anyway, back to this.
Still be.
So Athenos basically dug deep. He went up into his mind attic. It's not like a mind palace. Let's be very clear. His mind jungle, perhaps. He found an old memory of one of the trials of the gods where it was whoever could profess the most love to not even Aphrodite. It was Hermesia, a very fast god. This was from a more brutal time in Athenos' world's history. So the idea was the competitors needed to gouge out the heart of one of their fellow competition and present that to the god. And with that, they could ascend to demigodhood. So we turned that into a sapphic love story of 2 warriors in love who, at the precise moment where they're about to like strike out each other's hearts, they instead found out that they were like in love, and then they presented their love together conjoined as like a more powerful gift than any individual heart could give. And that was a part of a turning point in like Athenos's world's lore as well. We had to reenact the scene. So we had, like, imagine, if you will, a talking horse lying on the ground. Like,
I think it was Tao who was on the ground, right? I think Pony was
the goddess.
Yeah. Imagine, if you will, a Vocaloid lying on the ground protesting their death, and then like a deep sea mermaid with a sharp dagger above them, and then right before striking out the heart of the Vocaloid, they discover that they're actually in love with each other, and then present themselves to their very fast god, a talking horse. Kind of the synopsis of what happened.
My favorite part of this is it had to come back around to making an item, though, and the item you decided to make it
was just a large heart.
Parisia giving it to these 2 lovers to symbolize the terrible atrocity that happened around them when they fell in love.
Yep.
God, I love that sense of humor.
Oh my gosh.
I think I decided to name it in the moment the Grim Reminder.
The Grim Reminder.
It's so fitting. What is going through Smog's mind while like crafting this?
For him, it became very technical. Very happy not to have to do the play acting portion of this. Like, his job was to make the item. And for him, it was also like kind of simple because Dan said, you need Athenos' help and you need to spend a link. I spent a link with Tao since Tao was the first one cast in the performance. And the way I thought of it was, this is not a big display where Smog is putting a Magitech thing together and has to put together different parts. He's just drawing on like the love and excitement that Athenos is feeling while this reenactment is going on, like he would draw elements out to make crystals. And that's how he created the heart.
Do you think Smog, in drawing Athenos' pure raw energy, understands him a little bit better?
I think he already knew that that's what Athenos was like. I don't know if he would enjoy a mortal acting like Athenos has, but he has reverence for the gods, so he's happy to engage Athenos in like something that he seems very happy with.
Drama.
That's
Dramatic.
Athenos literally called it his little soap opera.
Yes.
I'm very amused by Daniel's reaction every time I have a Siri rip out a tooth, so I think I'm just going to keep doing.
Oh my gosh. Oh, shark teeth.
Oh, shark teeth.
I think you, not in character, were appalled by Pony wanting to rip out hair too, and like everybody was just like probably staring to you on screen. If we were in person, probably looking you right in the eyes, being like, "You just pulled out a tooth."
Yeah, but that comes out. That happens all the time.
It's easy to trim hair.
Siri doesn't have hair.
But you weren't a Siri in that moment. You were reacting as yourself. It's like, what is happening?
Listen.
You were like, a haircut? Absolutely not. Not
mean,
in my role-playing game.
True facts, I do hate getting haircuts, so maybe that's what happened. I have no excuse.
So funny, because we all were like, excuse me? What?
Excuse me, Miss Tooth?
I feel like Dan's gonna start having that like teeth falling out dream that people have when they're anxious.
Dude, I have those all the time.
Oh, I never have those. It's always I'm in school in a class I haven't been in. I haven't had one where I'm taking an exam I haven't studied for, but it's always like I'm in the wrong class or something. Or the social anxieties of being in school than the academic anxieties.
The amazing things that the American education system has done for us.
Fortunately, I've managed to like block those out, and most of my dreams, I feel like I've gotten like really good dreams lately. Semi-related to Athenos, I was in a Hunger Games-esque situation in a dream with high school people. Like I knew they were from my high school, but I like don't know their names. I just knew what they looked like, and they were there. Well, maybe I shouldn't say this like on a podcast that will be like live to an audience, but I was a werewolf in this dream, so it was really easy. Like, it was like not hard. Hunger Games, it was not hard.
We've already added Sammie as a vampire multiple times. The fire people came for her like 2 weeks ago, so I don't think it's going to be any issue to out you as a werewolf here too.
Okay, perfect. Well, this was more murdering my high school classmates. But that was like the main concern. Like, I don't want to put that energy out into the world. I have like no malevolence in me whatsoever. It's just I was a werewolf and it was cool. Okay, guys, that's it.
I'm glad you brought up the Hunger Games because obviously my first thought when you're like, it's a death match and then two people at the end stop it because they're in love, I'm immediately thinking Hunger Games. But do you have any mythological basis for that story you were spinning?
I do feel like that kind of story happens quite a lot in mythology. I wouldn't credit that entirely to the Hunger Games, but I did, now that you mention it, like I can see the correlation.
Yeah.
A solid trope in like a tournament arc where people fall in love in impossible situations. Kind of like that vibe. Less so based on anything in firmly set in mythology, because I am not that good of an expert on like Greek mythology, Greek or Roman mythology for that matter. I just know it's like a trope that's been done many times.
Plus, it's also a trope where you take the interpretation of the rules and sort of make it into your own, which is also fun. Kind of ended a little bit late for that last session, so not everybody got a chance to make their new heart. Do you think Athenos' giant heart will suffice for everyone if Pony and Asiri keep their little hearts? Or do you think everyone's going to have to make their individual heart? Like, is Juice going to have to?
As like a callback to the heart having the weight of 5 hearts that we were mentioning earlier, maybe it'll work for like 5 of us, and then there's perhaps something will have to be done for like Juice, or perhaps Juice gets tied in with Smog, and then either Pony or Asiri will still have to use their own quote-unquote hearts for this. But yeah, I'm very curious to see.
Smog and Juice could probably share, given that there's an extent to which you are an amalgam when you take an amalgam move at all.
Mm-hmm.
And Smog is aware of that now and in a conceptual world, so is probably thinking, that's probably fine by the rules. We're already cheating things anyway. We'll see, but I feel like there was some meaning in Dan saying this weighs 5 hearts. I should mention the other special ability that has, because Apparition says the GM stats out whatever you make, and apparently it reminds you of times of affection when you hold it. So it is very grim, and it reminds you of things. I am interested to see what Tau would cook up for this, though. I have no clue how you get a Vocaloid's heart.
Is it like some manifestation of their voice?
There is the concept of Performa from Tokyo Mirage Sessions, which is just artistry made manifest in like a conceptual world. Perhaps there will be some sort of magic that Tau has to pony up if they were really to give their heart for this world. But we know that's a bad idea.
What about Geyser then?
I don't know. I'm interested with Dee saying Geyser doesn't hold back thoughts because there's not a lot going on internally because she is a thought. How do you separate the core of Geyser from Geyser in that case? She would just hop in the bucket. Get tiny and hop in the bucket.
That would be a terrible decision.
I am my heart.
Or it could just be pure Geyser and somehow pull off a prank or sleight of hand or something.
She gets Dance Water Dance and then just tosses one of the duplicates in the bucket.
Oh no. Oh no. What would you all done differently then?
I think there were a lot of times this session where I held back a little bit because I wanted to give people a minute to get into the scene. And then I just sort of ended up waiting a little bit longer and then doing what I was going to do anyway. I wish I just would have gotten what I wanted out of the way and then left bigger chunks of time for other people to jump in there. And part of that is like, I've played with everybody here before, but this is the first time this whole group is playing. So we're figuring out how that dynamic works still, especially because we've had a couple sessions where just like one person is missing. So we're still figuring out our pace with each other.
It is tough. We know each other from in person, but we are playing online. And while we have video cams on, it's like harder to tell. Some of us do and some of us don't. And it's harder to tell when someone who doesn't have their camera on might be like about to say something, as opposed to like, you can usually tell like the visual expressions of someone who's on camera who's going to engage with the scene.
Daniel did give me the note the other day. We were talking about it. He was like, everyone seems to be very balanced in sharing time. So that sounds like a good sign. That everyone is at least getting heard.
Biggest fear is definitely like taking up too much time.
Yes.
I think from other people. And I guess like Alex was saying, like to the detriment of my actual play where I'm like, I don't want to like say another thing because I just said something, but then I'll just wait. And then I will say it later. And then it's like, should I just have said it?
Sometimes you just got to rapid fire and then you've exhausted what you want to do and then somebody else can take over instead of worrying about, I've had too many turns, somebody else jump in.
I think the fear that I have rather than like I have taken too many turns so much is like, what if I take a turn and then it pushes us in a direction that some of us didn't want to go?
Yeah, I understand that. I was worried with like being immediately let's go to the world of the lost, which is why I think I paused, maybe not as Smog, but like made sure everybody had a reaction to that before we started finding a place to bed down. And we also had that bit where we were like, where are we going to sleep? Which didn't seem like we had many options anyways. There was time for everybody to say if they wanted to do something else.
One of my fears is I dread silence in an RP table because it usually means something is going wrong. So I will always, and then this also goes back to my background with just regular improv in general. I will always try to throw something in just to give that yes and. So I'm always like, am I talking too much? Should I shut up?
Yeah, and there are definitely people who just like need the time to process to figure out if they want to do something or are like really in their character's heads and their character doesn't want to do anything in that. So you have to just sort of accept that from some people that either their character or their player is a little shy or not particularly interested in a certain situation and is happy to move on to something else.
I'm not sure if there's anything I would change immediately from the play, from what we did. However, I think I want to do like more of a deep dive into like Athanos' character. Not that I didn't enjoy doing the improv, but I would like to be able to improv even better with more of a basis on like the world and where I'm coming from and that kind of thing. Like have a firmer idea of Athanos' stance on various topics.
Yeah, that's always really hard, especially when you're bringing a character from a world you created, because you have to be like, oh yeah, this is how this economy works, or oh yeah, this is how this fundamental fixture acts and how people would respond to it. It's very nuanced.
I highly recommend creating a playlist because it forces you to think about the emotions your characters went through and what defines them, and then put that in order if you have not done so already.
You say that like I haven't created a playlist. It's just very long.
Oh,
So
no.
I haven't shared it.
Mood.
But I'll share it after that.
Yes, share it, but like we're going to do more playlist episodes. I don't know if one has come out by the time we do this.
Oh, okay.
Try to get it down to like 10 to 15 tracks is a sweet spot. Like make it feel like an album.
Okay, mine's like 17, so that should be fine. I can cut.
I don't know if there was anything specifically I would have done differently. One of the things I was considering, instead of the tooth for a series heart, quote unquote, the only reason I did that was like easily expendable, and then also already halfway the shape, so it wouldn't take too long to get there. But also I think there's something about Asiri keeping her heart in her mouth and talking the way she does. There's some metaphor there. I was going to rip off one of her tentacles on her hips, because those grow back, and I'd like fashion that, because that also has a more dangerous element to it. So if they really want to handle her heart, they're going to have to want to work for it.
Right. I mean, I think you said it best in the sense that, like, if the tooth is disposable, is that like a series saying that, like, my heart is disposable?
It could be. I don't know if it's obvious or not. The series doesn't think particularly highly of herself.
Yeah.
So, you know, it definitely plays into that.
I'm trying to think, is Siri our only party member who does not have an inflated sense of ego?
Go on.
All the rest of us feel so self-important to me.
I don't think Tao feels self-important.
I think that side of Tao hasn't come out yet, because I don't know if you've listened to the Tao character episode, but Tao's ambitions are basically to be a god.
I have not listened to that yet.
Tao might not be showing that. Tao might be a slightly more humble god, but I feel like if you want to be a god, you feel like you have something important to give to other people.
Right.
Hilarious. I hadn't considered the party in that way, but yeah, everyone does have a pretty sense of themselves.
Yeah, self-worth.
The series just like,
I think there are definitely times where guys are waffles, but it doesn't matter as much to her.
Yeah.
But I think that's the closest we have other than Asiri.
This episode got real.
We're talking about literally giving away our hearts to enter somewhere. Ugh. It had to.
I love it. Aesthetically, Sammie loves that. Alright, so let's get into the resolution phase, the segment of the show where we each get to say something about the game with no responses. What is your final say on this session, Dex?
I really like playing with you guys. You can find me at DexFanWrites on Twitter. I've been reading a lot of Viet fantasy lately, and I would recommend highly Aliette de Petard. She does a lot of sapphic Viet fantasy.
Alright, what about you, Alex?
Change has been a long time coming for Smog, and we might finally see it next time. Oof. You can find me on Twitter at Shining Crowbat, and I suggest checking another completed podcast, Game Mechanics, from what was the Orange Groves Podcast Network. It is, I think, a pair of hosts between a couple seasons talking to different tabletop game creators about the mechanics for their games. It's an in-depth critical look at different tabletop game mechanics.
And for myself, I think as players, we're all getting really accustomed to each other, so I'm only looking forward to everything that comes out of this world. I think this world might be our biggest challenge yet, because there's only one person, and we're not really quite sure what they want and or need yet. So I'm very interested to see where that goes and how everyone makes the best or worst of that. You can find me. Wait, no you can't. I'm not even on this realm anymore. This has been Resolve, an afterplay show. You can find us online at most social media sites at ResolveAP.
Except Instagram, which is at ResolveAfterplay.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. You can buy the game we're playing, Interstitial, Our Hearts Intertwined, from its creator, Riley Hopkins, at linksmithgames.com.
All links will be included in the description of the episode.
Thank you so much for listening. We end our turn here, so now it's your turn. Tell us what's happening in your game.